What exactly is at stake in the 2023 NBA playoffs? Let's run through it. We're getting ready to announce the winner of the MVP award this year, and it's with all certainty going to be either Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid. Um, Most likely going to be Embiid. I feel like the narrative's really running with Embiid. I don't know how much stock you put into the straw polls that have been coming out, but that's based off of real voters. Um, and it seems like most of the stock is with Embiid right now. And I'm not saying that for better or worse. Um, Truly, I do think Nikola Jokic is probably more indifferent towards it um, than he would be like upset about not getting it. Plus, I think winning it would definitely put added pressure on him and the Nuggets. However, that pressure's already there, and it's been there. We already talk about it now. Um, you know, how are we going to give the award to Jokic for a third straight time when the guy's never won a title, when he's never been to an NBA Finals, right? I think it's a little unfair. Um, Point me to a season where the Nuggets have had a fully healthy roster in the playoffs with time to gel. They just haven't. They haven't had a healthy Jamal Murray. I mean, Jokic has reached a conference final, you know, and I think that kind of gets lost in this narrative too. Like, Joel Embiid hasn't done shit in the playoffs either. He's never played in a conference final. His numbers aren't exactly setting the world on fire. Career, he's 22-22 in the postseason, and he's never played in a conference final, and he averages 24 points a game on 46% shooting, 29% from three. Like I said, not exactly setting the world on fire. And I know those teams weren't all star-studded, and maybe some of them were ahead of their time, and say what you will about Ben Simmons, but yeah, and it's not all on Jokic and it's not all on Embiid, but we talk about Jokic like he's, like just a total bum in the postseason, and that's just not true, and it's not true about Embiid either. But we're getting to that point where these guys are in the primes of their careers, and we're starting to talk about them as all-timers. I see the stuff about Embiid is the closest thing to Olajuwon since Olajuwon, and I'm like, hey, hey, slow down a little bit. But it's out there, and I see it, and the stuff is right there with Jokic too. And undoubtedly, if he won a 3-time MVP, that would launch him into yet another insane category. And that's right there on the table. But the point being, no matter who takes home this award, granted, whoever does take home the award just will have that much more pressure on them and their team. But whoever takes home this award, regardless, these two guys, Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, it's time to play up to the level of your how do I say your reputation. It's time to play up to the level of your reputation, because Nikola Jokic, you are the 1 seed, right? You have a fully healthy team, so it's go time. It's go time. And Joel Embiid, this is your best season you've ever had. Congratulations. You're primed for success. You're in the 3 spot, and you're gonna draw a pretty favorable first round matchup, most likely against Brooklyn. It's go time. Then you got the Celtics in the second round. Figure it out. It's go time. This is, it's not going to be okay for you to say this is not a rivalry. They always kick our ass. I mean, that meme, granted, us Celtics fans, we cherish it. We pass it around. We love it. But hey, that's not going to be acceptable after this year. You're in the prime of your career. You have James Harden, who that's kind of the other thing here for Philly is there's a huge elephant in the room, a huge weight weighing over the franchise. There's a real possibility that James Harden walks this offseason. And I don't know if that's the right move. I mean, I don't know if it's a lock. that it would be only to Houston. I don't know if it could be another team. Those two seem to get along very well, Joel Embiid and James Harden. But you got to start to wonder if they underperform, if they bounce out early. That's just probably going to be more motivation for James Harden to walk out. And, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's something that Philly and Joel Embiid have to be thinking about. Less so for the Nuggets because I don't think they're in a position to blow anything up. I mean, they don't really have a true second star. I mean, you'd like to say it's Jamal Murray, but, he's not necessarily an all-star. He can play like one when he's really going, but it's been a bit of a streaky season. I know he missed a lot of time. It took him a while to get back into the flow of things, but they don't really have the blow it up potential. No real threatening, like impending free agency or any drama up to the level of James Harden potentially walking in free agency. Then you've got the fact that Philly's now kind of done this quite a few times. This Embiid Harden pairing hasn't been together that long, but the idea that they traded for Harden and then he could just walk for nothing, it's something to think about. And I know Daryl Morey's thinking about it, and the stuff is there for Doc Rivers too. I'm not saying Doc Rivers will get fired. Doc Rivers does have a lot of pedigree and has a reputation that shouldn't, but does precede him. And there's a lot to take note of with Philly in this postseason. The Suns took a huge swing this year, and they better not have missed. They bet it all on Kevin Durant, and up until this point, it hasn't really been a win. It hasn't really been a loss. They haven't lost with Durant in the lineup yet. That's important, but he also hasn't played a lot. And CP3 misses games. Now, at the time of the trade, Booker was out too. So you took a swing on another guy who isn't known to be the most healthy. Okay, well, he's back, and he's right. And he's right now. And you've got all you guys going to the playoffs. I'm not saying it's title or bust, but when you made that trade, you opened the door for the title or bust talk and arguments. So here we are, and that's gonna be the expectation. You bring in a guy like Kevin Durant, you bet it all on Kevin Durant. Really leverage much of your future for it. If they don't at least make a conference final and make it competitive, I would say if they don't make the finals, they're probably looking at a long summer, right? I don't know if I would be so harsh on them because, like I said, they haven't had a lot of time to gel, and anybody who knows, basketball or sports in general, continuity matters. So I'm not going into this playoffs expecting them. They're not my favorite. Like I said, I like Denver more as we stand currently. And if you ask me to take them or Phoenix to the field, of course I would take the field because there's just way too much uncertainty with Phoenix. Just way too much uncertainty there. I think they could draw us. I mean, we're talking about teams fighting to avoid them in the first round, but those three teams, LA, and Golden State, they're going to be tough draws. You think Phoenix is really looking forward to playing Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James or Anthony Davis or Steph Curry in the first round? You think they're looking forward to either of those? No. They probably thought they were going to get an easier draw. They probably thought, man, we might get New Orleans or we might get Minnesota or something like that. But they've locked themselves into that 4 spot, and the LA teams have caught up, and Golden State's right there, and they're going to get a tough draw in the first round. So pressure's going to be on right away in the West, and that's why this year's first round is going to be one of the most exciting first rounds we've had in a long time. That being said, on the other side of that coin is the LA teams. We look at the Lakers. You look at both teams are blow it up candidates, I think. When you really look at it, I think if you have an early bounce out, if you're the Lakers, you really got to look at where is this train headed, right? You'd love to say run it back, but you've been running it back. And you know what you've got in Anthony Davis is not a player who's going to be there all 82 games. You know that about LeBron now too, but with LeBron, it's weird because LeBron's going to miss time, but LeBron conveniently is always ready for the playoffs, right? And is just much more of I still think LeBron's just so much more of a sure thing than Anthony Davis is, right? I just put a lot more stock into LeBron. Granted, I think he's the greatest player of all time. And Anthony Davis barely scratches that. He doesn't even scratch that conversation at all. He's much more like a top 75 all-time player. But you gotta wonder, like, do they look to trade Davis? Do they look to trade LeBron? I don't know. I don't think they do. I think, ultimately it just would sound way too crazy to them to do either of those things, and they would just run it back with, the case for LA to keep everybody together is like, well, you got to throw out the first half of the season, and we were so much better after the trade deadline, and so if we get a full season of that, then yada yada yada, and they may be onto something, but also it's LA, and the pressure's on. You're expected to win now, and you've got LeBron, you've got AD, and they would have to probably look ahead a year from now and be like, what's up with this Bronny thing? Do we think Bronny's coming to the NBA right away after his first year in college? And is LeBron serious about leaving? That could really skew their perception of the future of LeBron and AD being in LA. Same goes for the Clippers. This is year 5 of the Paul George and Kawhi experience, and you're not happy with what you've seen, right? Like, if you're a Clippers fan, if you're in that front office with the Clippers, you're not thrilled with what you're seeing. You're especially not thrilled with what you're seeing when you factor in that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is incredible, and they only have a few more. You only have a few more wins than the Thunder do, and you have arguably a much more talented team. Between Paul George and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, of course, SGA has surpassed Paul George as a player. Overall, I think SGA's right on the brim of top 10 player. And Paul George just isn't at this point. Still give me Kawhi. When you factor in the fact, when it's SGA for Kawhi and Paul George, you still take Kawhi and Paul George, right? But with all the draft picks and the hemorrhaging of the future of the team it's all worth it if they win, right? You get even just one title out of this thing, and you're like, man, that trade was worth it 100%. You would do it over and over and over again. But I don't know, man. Has it been worth it up to this point? I don't think anybody would say it's been worth it up to this point. It just hasn't been. And it's a shame because a lot of that has to do with health and just sheer luck. So much of that's been out of the hands of the Clippers and Kawhi and Paul George, but they haven't drawn a good hand here, and they spent a lot to do this, and it hasn't worked out. So if they are an early bounce out, if they draw Phoenix early on and they bounce out, gonna be a really long summer for the Clippers. And this is where you start to maybe hear about the next star moving on. And I don't know what it would look like. I don't know what it would mean. They've got that shiny new stadium. I'm sure they don't want to roll into it with what looks like an expansion team, remnants of what was once a playoff squad. So I don't think they're going to look to rebuild, but there's blow it up potential in crypto.com arena. There just is right now for both teams.